Can the Ryzen 5 5600G actually handle Mortal Shell 2? Today we're going to find out. I'm testing the game across 1080p, 900p, and 720p with different FSR settings and frame generation configurations. And by the end of this benchmark, we'll find out one important thing. Which setting actually gives the best balance between image quality and FPS on the Ryzen 5 5600G? Let's get straight into the benchmark. Before we start, here's the system I'm using. AMD Ryzen 5 5600G processor. MSI B550M Pro-VDH Wi-Fi motherboard. Vega 7 integrated graphics, 32GB 2x16GB 3200MHz DDR4 RAM, Gigabyte 500GB SSD, and Esports 750W power supply, Windows 11 Pro operating system, resolution 720p 900p 1080p, AMD FSR Upscaling, frame generation on. The goal here isn't to make the game look as good as possible. The goal is to find out how playable Mortal Shell 2 can actually be on an integrated GPU.
Let's start with 1080p and FSR Balanced. This is our first test, and it's also a good starting point for judging how much performance we can get while maintaining relatively good image quality. At this setting, the biggest question isn't simply the FPS number, it's how the game actually feels during combat and movement. Because Mortal Shell 2 is a demanding action game, consistent frame delivery is especially important.
I think, I pray, our...
Lavender, we made you something. Something to remember us by. I'm sure I'll see you again. After the reunion. I like to imagine us all in a great field of flowers. The sun's always shining, and the path is... Come on, Lavender. Will you dance with me?
Please, don't hurt Navi. Fetch the bucket.
No!
We need its blood for the ritual.
So let's move to a more aggressive FSR setting.
Why?
Now we're keeping the resolution at 1080p, but switching FSR from Balanced to Performance. This gives the GPU more breathing room by reducing the internal rendering workload. But there's always a trade-off. The more aggressively we upscale, the more noticeable image quality compromises can become.
It's time to claim. This night, Haros. He was once like any mortal, driven by the illusion of self. Now he's pure, a vessel to be filled with purpose. Your purpose. You're more than a weapon, child. Find what remains of me.
Do not mourn. Your true disciples are waiting.
So what happens if we push FSR even further? This is where things get interesting. We're still outputting at 1080p, but FSR is now set to Ultra Performance. That means we're prioritizing FPS much more heavily than image quality. At this point, we can clearly see the effect of lowering the internal rendering resolution. But personally, I wouldn't choose a setting purely because the FPS counter is higher. For an action game like this, image quality still matters.
Of your strength, child.
So let's drop the output resolution and see whether we can get a better overall balance. Now we're moving down to 900p, but instead of using an aggressive FSR mode, we're using FSR Quality. This is an interesting combination because we're reducing the output resolution while keeping the upscaling quality relatively high. Compared with our previous 1080p tests, this configuration could potentially offer a much better balance between performance and visual quality.
learn of your strength, child. Your shell serves you as a brother.
But let's push it one step further. Now, we're staying at 900p, but switching FSR from quality to balanced. This should give the GPU even more room to deliver higher frame rates. This is becoming a very interesting middle ground. We're no longer pushing 1080p, but we're also not dropping all the way down to 720p.
Now let's see what happens at 720p. For this test, we're going to 720p with FSR native. This gives us a useful reference point. Instead of relying heavily on upscaling, we're letting the game render at a lower native resolution.
Your shell serves you as a brother.
Now, let's keep the same 720p output resolution, but introduce FSR Quality. This is one of the most interesting tests in the entire benchmark, 720p output with FSR Quality. We're reducing the resolution considerably, but we're allowing FSR to reconstruct the image.
Your shell serves you as a brother.
At this point, we have tested several different combinations, but there's one configuration we still need to test, and that's 1080p with FSR Quality. And finally, we're back to 1080p, but this time we're using FSR Quality. This is probably one of the most important tests because it represents a much more visually appealing target than the aggressive performance and ultra performance modes. So now we have all 8 results. Looking at all 8 tests, we can clearly see how the different resolution and FSR combinations affect performance. But raw FPS isn't the only thing that matters.
Your shell serves you as a brother.
So what would I actually recommend? If your priority is maximum FPS, then the best performing configuration from this benchmark is... And if you want to prioritize image quality at 1080p, then 1080p plus FSR quality plus frame generation is the configuration to look at. Of course, your final choice depends on whether you prefer smoother gameplay or better image quality.
So, can the Ryzen 5 5600G handle Mortal Shell 2? Based on these 8 benchmark tests, the answer is yes, but you'll need to choose your settings carefully. 1080p isn't necessarily the ideal target if you're looking for the smoothest experience. Dropping to 900p or 720p and choosing the right FSR mode can make a significant difference to performance. And frame generation can further change how the game feels, although the raw FPS number shouldn't be the only thing you look at. For an integrated Vega 7 GPU, getting the best experience is all about finding that sweet spot between resolution, FSR, and frame rate.
If this benchmark helped you understand what kind of performance you can expect from the Ryzen 5 5600G, make sure to hit the like button. And if you're using an APU or an older PC, subscribe to the channel for more real-world gaming benchmarks. Let me know in the comments, which setting would you use, 1080p, 900p, or 720p? I'll see you in the next benchmark. Thanks for watching.